Welcome back to part 2 of our 2021 Iceland trip. In part 1 we explored Western Iceland, and as well as seeing many of its classic sites, we also got to do some coasteering on the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. So stick around and see what happens in part 2. We started this section of the trip with a huge driving day all the way from Ólafsvík to Húsavík. Early on in the journey, we went past the iconic mountain of Kernow, which is near Grindafoss, and as you can see, my Icelandic pronunciation has not improved at all, and there is the very nearby waterfall of Fagradalsfjall. The coastline here wasn't going to offer any coasteering, as we were quite far in a sea fjord with quite mellow coastline, and we weren't going to see anything between here and Húsavík unless we'd taken a detour to the West Fjords, and we just decided we didn't have enough time in our itinerary to do that, so we just pushed on to Húsavík. The journey was bookended with another amazing waterfall. This is Godavos, which isn't too far from Húsavík itself, and in my opinion is one of Iceland's prettiest waterfalls. So after a long day, this was a nice little bookend to the journey. So this is the Geysir Bay, and this is Húsavík's answer to the Blue Lagoon. And whilst not as large or indeed as well known as the Blue Lagoon, it's still a nice place to visit, and this was actually seemed to be fairly full of locals, just chilling and admiring the sunset as we gazed across the huge sea fjord to the peninsula on the other side. So we'd had a quick look at the coast, but there was no coasteering in Húsavík. So the next day we set off on another long journey to Egilsstaðir, and on the way we had some absolutely epic scenery to take in. So this is Fjadrargljufur, which is in the Stuvgljufur Canyon. So check me out, you could tell I've been practicing these names. And this is also where you'll find the more famous Detifoss waterfall, which is actually just a few kilometers up the road. It has been likened to Iceland's Grand Canyon. It's a stunning place. This is the mighty Detifoss itself. So this is a huge waterfall. Look at the people there for scale. And this is where the Stuvgljufur Canyon begins. Towards the end of the day, we arrived here at the ravine known as the Stuvgljufur Ravine. And this is a wonderful display of basalt columns. So really cool geology here. You see almost like the organ pipe flutings there. Really cool place. It was already day 9 of our Iceland trip, and we were in Egilsstaðir in eastern Iceland. This is Reykjanes, and we took on a hike to take in this waterfall. Look at those amazing basalt columns, really stunning. and this was on the way to another dramatic waterfall, and this waterfall is Hengifoss. Not content with just taking the path down, we actually scoped out this sort of continuation of the canyon going down from Hengifoss, and managed to find an easy way down, and had a cool little sort of walk stroke scramble down here. And it actually took us all the way to the top of Detifoss. And again, we see those wonderful basalt columns. So that was a lovely little bonus. So Emily is a lifelong lover of horses, and she has her own horse and rides all the time. And one thing she really wanted to do in Iceland was ride some Icelandic horses. And she got a chance in Egilsstaðir, and we went to a place called Finnstaðir Horse Ranch, and there she is. So for all you horse lovers out there, there is a longer version of Em's horse riding adventure available on my other channel, so check the link in the description. It was time to move on, and we headed down southwards towards Hup and back to the coast, and hopefully to find some coasteering. But oh dear, look at the rough seas here. So this is Hvalnes, the Hvalnes beach. And this is the Hvalnes lighthouse, one of those very typical orange, bright orange lighthouses. There's the Vestrahorn mountain, absolutely raging waves, but I'd identified the peninsula that the lighthouse is on as a potential spot for coasteering. But not today. But on closer inspection, it didn't actually look good for coasteering at all. It didn't have any elevation to it. It really had no height, no cliffy nature at all. It would have made for a very poor coasteer, so even if the seas had been flat, I'm not sure it would have been worth going in. So we'd travelled an immense distance around Iceland by this stage and really hadn't found any more coasteering. So on we went to spend the night at Kernow. Off we go, having a little look up the impronounceable canyon. The unpronounceable canyon in question is the Fjadrargljufur Canyon. So it's also become a really famous stop. You can go hiking along its edges. But here we are, stepping up a notch and actually going for a gorge walk in the Fjadrargljufur Canyon. So how did this happen? So we obviously hadn't found any coasteering in all this time, and at the same time, absolutely hideous weather had set in for several days, just relentless rain. So even just walking around doing usual tourist stuff had become a really grim experience. So kind of at our wits' end really, we arrived at this canyon in the morning and rapidly gave up on just going for a hike, and thought, why not? Let's get the wetsuits out and go and have some fun. So, as we call it in the UK, we went for a bit of a gorge walk. As we set off upstream, some easy swimming until reaching this impasse. where the river all converged into a couple of narrow points, and therefore the water flow increased massively. And I'm just trying to figure out if there's any way of getting past it. It wasn't that deep, but it was so fast and powerful. I knew if I sort of just waded into it, I'd be swept away immediately. Literally just a few feet from solving it. Finally, admitting defeat. But now, it was all the fun. After questing upstream, we could simply enjoy the ride all the way back down the river. And this was brilliant fun. In places very shallow, but if you pick the right line, it was such good fun. This was an awesome use of an otherwise unusable rainy day. Yay, we did it! That was good. A lot more fun than standing around in the rain taking photos and getting wet. So amazing. Thank you, Iceland, for that one.
Well done, us.
Apart from a quick stop at Skogafos, southern Iceland was cancelled. The weather was horrible and was going to be that way for the next few days. So with that, and the fact that the volcano had reawoken, made us rapidly change our plans and head back to the Reykjanes Peninsula. So join us for part 3, where we go and visit the erupting volcano, as well as having a final amazing coaster back at the Brim Kettle lava pots. See you next time.